Hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are subscribers, welcome back. And for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Christina. I am a recent breast cancer survivor and decided to start a YouTube channel to just create awareness, educate with the things I've learned along my journey, and just to spread some positivity. I know it's a rough go when you're first starting this, so I thought by creating some of these videos that it would help to educate you along your journey and just enlighten you for what you're about to expect. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about ports and whether you should get one or whether you should not get one, or just help you along that decision-making process. To start out, I wanted to explain I'm not a doctor, I am not a nurse. The only medical background I have is with dentistry. So I don't want to give some advice and have you think that it's coming from some sort of medical background, because it's not. It is my personal opinions and what I have experienced and what I've learned along my personal journey. I did get a port. I had a power port placed on August 10th of 2016. It was 6 days before I started chemo. I started on August 16th. I know that there are some people that get their port placed the same day they start chemo, and I've heard that works out well. The port that I had placed was a power port. I know there are different kinds of ports, which I'm not completely familiar with. Mine is has a single entry point, but I know that there are some that you can have two entry points for different types of medications that you need at the same time. I'm going to show you a little bit of a close-up of my port here. So here is my port. As you can see, it looks like about the size of a dime or a nickel, but underneath the skin, you can tell it's about the size of a quarter, I would say, maybe a little bit smaller. But you can see here that there are 3 prongs. I'm going to kind of stretch the skin out. And in the center of those 3 prongs are where the port is accessed with a special needle. You can actually, I don't know if you can see it, but you can feel the catheter that runs right up along here. So the actual port itself is called the lumen. That's where it's accessed with that special needle. And then, like I said, there's a little tube that comes off of it, or a catheter that's actually entering the jugular vein in most cases. My jugular vein was too small, so it was put in my subclavian vein. And I do want to talk a little bit about my story behind getting my port, because I think it would weigh whether you would want to get one or not. Because my jugular vein was too small and they put in that subclavian vein, the way it was adjusted, it actually nicked my lung when I was in surgery. However, I didn't know that for about 2 days, so I was feeling pretty cruddy and missing some work and not really knowing why. And then I called my oncology clinic and explained a little bit about what I was feeling, and they said, go to the emergency room. And they had called over and explained what they thought it might be. And after some x-rays, they found that they had actually punctured my lung during that surgery, but it was missed because my lung hadn't deflated when they had taken the chest x-ray at the end of the surgery. So I did have to have a chest tube placed, which was not the funnest moment. And I spent about 4 days in the hospital just letting that lung, build back up and get the drainage out that needed to be out. I was lucky to only be there 4 days. They said I could be there for up to a week. And during that time, I was really concerned that it was going to affect my chemo and when I would start chemo. However, it didn't. I was able to be released on a Monday and start my chemo as scheduled on Tuesday, which was pretty great. I just wanted to explain that portion of it because it's something that definitely can happen, obviously, and it might be something that weighs your decision. If I had to redo it, I would still do it again. I love my port. I am so grateful for my port, and I tell people all the time that I earned the heck out of this thing, so you better use it. When you first sit down with your oncologist or in the beginning stages of your appointments, they will go over a port with you. They asked me, is this something that you might want? And before she'd even complete her sentence, I said yes. And one of the reasons why is because I know I have small veins. I've always had trouble being accessed for blood draws, for giving blood, for getting IVs, all of those things. And I knew that if I was getting all this medication along my journey, that I would be wanting something like this, because I didn't want to have to be poked over and over again. And I do have a tendency to have my, when my veins are being accessed, to have them collapse, and I can actually feel it collapse, and I didn't want to deal with that repeatedly. So if I had to do it over again, I would still choose to have the port. And again, I don't want to sway that decision for you. I'm just telling you my personal opinion with that. A port is an implanted device that's pretty shallow under the skin. When I was showing you, you could see the septum, and then I can feel the catheter. The catheter goes directly into that vein, and so all that medication that's going into your port goes directly into your bloodstream. It doesn't have to be metabolized anywhere, which is great. You're instantly getting that medication into your bloodstream. However, if something like bacteria is introduced, then obviously that's going straight to your bloodstream, which can be pretty dangerous. But they take every precaution so that that does not happen. You can have a port placed for many different reasons. If you're somebody who's experiencing a lot of blood transfusions, getting a lot of medication like chemotherapy, which is exactly why I got it. I was experiencing breast cancer, like I explained before, and it was explained to me that I would be getting infusions for about a year, and so getting that port placed was pretty important to me, because a year of getting IVs did not sound pleasant to me. I personally needed a lot of hydration in between my chemo appointments. I was really struggling to keep fluids down, and there was a period where I was going to the oncology clinic almost every single day to get that hydration, and had it been an IV that I was getting poked with every time, that would get pretty cumbersome for me. So I was really grateful for the port, because it has been accessed a lot. When you're having your port placed, you could choose to be awake for it. You can choose to be extremely sedated, or you could choose what I chose, and that was to be under general anesthesia. I didn't want to feel them digging around in my veins or cutting me open or anything like that, so I chose to be completely asleep. I wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits and advantages of having a port, and one of those things I already touched on is a lot less needle sticks. You can even have the needle in for several days. So if it's something where you're having an extended hospital stay or even a short hospital stay, that once they access that, they can keep that needle in for quite a while, as long as they're flushing it out. You can get all your medication through it that way. And obviously general anesthesia too, which is really nice. You can save yourself that IV poke. Another advantage is that the port can stay in for a long period of time. If you're getting, medication for several years, it could stay in that entire time if you wanted to. And I believe that it's fairly unnoticeable. I mean, it does leave a little bit of a bulge in the skin, but it's kind of out of the way, where even if you're wearing a V-neck shirt, it's really hard to have it be noticeable. And there aren't very many times where people have been able to see it, luckily. A lot of times they can give you some lidocaine, and it's something that they prescribe to you, and you pick it up, and it's something you just apply maybe 20 minutes before your appointment. I never used it. I don't even know what it feels like, because I felt that when they access the port, there isn't much pain to it. There's some that are more gentle than others. I've noticed that when I'm at the oncology clinic, they're pretty delicate with you and take every precaution possible. And when I was in the ER or getting ready for surgery, they were a lot more rough with it. So it's in a position that even if they're performing surgery on your chest, it can still be accessed. I didn't have to worry about that. In fact, one of my implants, it kind of comes up almost right underneath that, and he was able to do that without a problem, which I thought was pretty great. And it can stay under that skin for several years if you're somebody who's getting ready to encounter quite a bit of medication. For me, I have to have it in for about a year. And part of me says, I kind of want to leave it in longer because it's great to be able to have that access pretty easily. But there are a lot of times where my son or one of the dogs or one of the kids hits it and it's pretty painful. Or even my husband went to go swipe something off my shirt the other day and hit it, and it is pretty sensitive. But I protect that thing like crazy. I cover it. If somebody's around me that is going crazy, like one of my dogs, I just cover it up so that they aren't hitting it. I also wanted to talk about some advice that I wanted to give you should you choose to get the port. And one of those things is to be an advocate for your port and protect that thing like crazy. And they will tell you that. They told me that from the get-go. When you get that port, you protect it. You find out and make sure that the person that's accessing it is somebody who's qualified to do so. And that leads me to my next thing. A lot of the appointments you might experience might be something that needs an access to your port or an IV. Whenever it was something like that, or I would always ask if they were making an appointment, whether it be a heart scan or something like that, I would say, is this something that I need an IV for? And if they said yes or no, I would say, hey, can I have somebody there that's able to access my port? A lot of times they'd show up, or I would show up to an appointment, and they wouldn't have somebody that was qualified to access it, and so I would have to get an IV. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting this port for that reason and then having to get that IV. So I was pretty particular about asking, hey, is this something that I need my port accessed for? And they were pretty accommodating to find somebody that would, be there when I would show up for my appointment so that I didn't have to endure that. Another thing is the oncology clinic where I went to, they were so awesome about just saying, hey, if you're needing to go to an appointment where they don't have somebody that's qualified, stop by. They can access the port, they cover it up. You can drive to your appointment without a problem, and it's already accessed, which is great. And I know that a lot of people appreciated that when I would show up and it was already accessed. They will give you a card for what type of port that you're getting. And I didn't think this was a big deal. They said, make sure you have this card with you at all times. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. And I went to the ER and I thought, well, they'll just look up on my medical record the fact that I have a power port and be able to access it that way. But that goes against the rules. For power port, I know for sure they have to have two means of confirming that you do have a power port or what type of port you have. And they were able to access my records, but I should have had my card with me. And so they ended up having to give me an IV, which took 3 tries and a blown vein later, but it made me learn my lesson, and I always kept that power port card in my wallet. So if there's ever an emergency or anything like that, it would just, you could show them and they could have the two means to be able to access that. When you go to your appointments, make sure that you're wearing clothing that's pretty easy for them to access that. I always wore like a zip-up sweatshirt or even a shirt like this. They can just kind of pull it down and it's easily accessed. Wearing something high neck, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to pull that down and access that. And another thing that I learned from experience, when I was in for my reconstructive surgery, I had somebody who tried to access my port and missed, and then tried to access it again, got a second needle for it, and still couldn't get the return on it that they needed to. So she had to call another nurse in, and that nurse took the needle out and then poked it back in my port. And I know, just experience before, you don't use the same needle to access anywhere under the skin. And she had done it so quick that I didn't think to stop her or know to stop her because I didn't know what she was doing. But I ended up talking to one of the nurses at the oncology clinic later, and I said, hey, just so you know, that happened. Is that something that's okay? And she said, absolutely not. Once you access that port with one needle, you do not want to reintroduce that needle into the system. And the reason why is because you have a higher probability of having bacteria on that. And like I said before, once they put that needle in there, that needle accesses straight to your bloodstream, and so that bacteria would go straight to your bloodstream, which would be no good. Well, I think that's everything that I wanted to go over. Hopefully it answered some questions that you might be having about getting a port. Again, my situation was a little bit unique when I had my lung collapse, but I hope that doesn't sway your opinion too much, because I really do love having the port and I would highly suggest it. Again, I don't have a medical background or anything like that, just the experience of using one. Also, I want to thank you again for stopping by my channel. I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button, and in the comments below, just any suggestions that you guys might have on videos that you want to see, or stories that you might want to hear about that help you along your journey. I would really appreciate that. Thank you again so much for stopping by. See you next time. Bye-bye. So I'm gonna get this one all adjusted here. So this one's really cute because you can split it right down the middle, or you can split it down to the side. It really doesn't matter how you wear it. It goes either way, and I'll show you both.